is Jim Gibson. Thank you for joining me today on my channel. Very much appreciated. And today I want to talk about the mistakes I have made in business. Now, I've been in business for 3 decades in the IT area. My company installed voice and data networks all throughout the United States, every state, every year. Worked for big corporations, worked for small companies, and we've done quite a lot. Computer networks, voice networks, including voice over IP, the latest technologies, cabling buildings, things like that. We've done all of that. And I have learned a lot in 30 years of running a business. So today, I'm going to talk to you about some of my mistakes. In Proverbs 1:20, it says, "Wisdom shouts in the street, and she lifts her voice in the square." And I used to tell my kids, what that means is sometimes you just need to pay attention. You need to pay attention to other people, what they've done, how they've succeeded in life, how they've failed. Learn from their success. Learn from their failure. So today, we're going to talk about some of my failures. And maybe you can learn from them and not repeat them as a small business owner. A friend of mine who's also helps me with real estate. He's been in real estate his whole life, and I've been in real estate now for about 15, 20 years. And but he knows a lot more about real estate than I do. So I often ask them different questions, different scenarios. You know, how should I do this? How should I do that? And he gives me his opinion. And I say to him, I say, you know, that's really wise. And he says to me every single time, Jim, it's not wisdom, it's scar tissue. And he says, you know, you can call it wisdom, but, you know, the bottom line is it's scar tissue. It's things that I have done wrong and suffered the consequences, and now I'm telling you not to make the same mistakes I've made. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Don't make the same mistakes that I have made. Now, the biggest mistake that I made, we're going to talk about at the end. So make sure you hang out to the very end, and you'll hear the biggest mistake I made, and don't repeat it, okay? Because if you repeat mistake, it will really cause you a lot of problems. So first of all, before we get started, look, if this type of information is good for you, if you're thinking of starting a business or you own a small business, or you're just curious about these things and this is of benefit to you, this type of discussion, please subscribe, ring the bell, and give me a thumbs up. Thank you. The first big mistake that I have made, and I look back on over 3 decades of being in business, is hiring. Hiring people. And I think associated with that is, I would say, too fast to hire, too slow to fire. And, you know, I had a lot of people come in my office with their resume, and we had a decent small business, okay? I'm not talking about, you know, 100 employees or things like that. So I'm talking about under 50 employees. Mine was, at the biggest, it was 30 employees, and I had a lot of subcontractors, which was really wise of me to do it that way. But hiring and firing has been one of my biggest problems I've had in the business. It's cost me a lot of money and a lot of time. First of all, I just believed I would believe everything on a resume, and I would hire someone on the spot rather than check them out and make sure that what they said on the resume is true. Do they really have those certifications? Can they really do the work that's put in front of them? We had a lady one time that was going to support the sales staff by doing typing for them and you know, interaction with customers, things like that. And so I said, how fast do you type? And she said 60 words a minute with a straight face. And it just so happens that that day I was practicing my type, and I want to get faster, so I had a typing tutorial on my computer. So I sat her down, and I said, do you mind taking a test? And I turned around my laptop, and I said, here it is, I'll start it. And the timer started, and she started typing. I realized that she didn't even know the keyboard. She was doing everything like this. And we're about 10 words a minute. And so obviously, she misrepresented her abilities. Well, she wasn't the only one. There was others that said they were certified in certain systems, things like that. But I learned, I should have learned earlier, but I learned you got to check. You got to check and verify to make sure that people are who they claim to be. And then the next biggest mistake I made in hiring, was I was too slow in firing. There's some people that I knew just wasn't working out, but because I put so much effort into them, for them to learn our culture, to learn our procedures, to learn the technology. I would send them to school for 2 weeks to learn some aspect of the technology, and I just did not want, if there's any way I could preserve them as an employee, that I could turn them into a profitable employee, not pulling my hair out every day because of mistakes and things like that, or because of a really bad attitude that some of these employees had. In some cases, very offensive attitude. And I just kept on saying, you know, I can counsel them, I could help them, I could, you know something? It took too long, wasted a lot of money, and at the end they didn't change. I can't change people. You can't change people. You can offer opportunities, but if the opportunity is not taken up, you really need to get rid of the person. Quicker the better. Be quick in firing, slow in hiring. And then, of course, other mistakes I have made is, gosh, I really like this person. It's almost like they're a friend, like we know each other. You know, we agree on all these issues and everything else, and I would hire them because they were like a friend, or hiring a friend. Worst mistake of my life. If you want to lose a friendship, hire a friend. That's what I would say. But too slow in firing and too fast in hiring. The next was, I got to a point in business where I didn't think I needed the level of expertise that I had at the beginning when I was under, you know, 8 employees type of thing, or 5 employees. It was when I was only had 5 employees, I was the person that had to know everything. I had to know, I had to know about each technology, each product we were selling, and our products, because it's in IT, had a lot of programming. We had to do a lot of programming. Had to do a lot of systems that fit the customer. When the customer says they want this phone to ring first and then that phone to ring after 30 seconds, you have to know how to program that into a business phone system. So at first I knew it all in that area. I was really capable, and I would teach my employees about what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. And I had procedures and everything else. But as we got older or bigger, been in business for a while, I had some people that were very good in technology, and I just kind of let them take over the employees. Now, you know something? That's fine when you're a big company. And you got 50, 100 employees. You can't do everything, I understand. But when you're a small company, or when you're starting, you really need to know the technology that you're selling. If you're an IT company anyway, you need to know the technology. Maybe not as much if you're not an IT company. Now, the other 2 areas is accounting. I trusted too much other people to do accounting for me, thinking that they knew what they were doing. After all, they claimed that they worked on, there we go again, claiming something that I didn't verify. Claimed they worked on QuickBooks for years, only to find out later that they really didn't know what they were doing. So you really need to know accounting, especially if you're starting a company. You better know it, and you better have an accounting system like QuickBooks to really run your business. And last is the sales. You know, if you're starting a company and you are the salesman, let me tell you, you really are. And you need to remain in that spot until you get large enough that you could give a sales manager responsibility in that area who is going to keep track of salesmen and the time they spent in the field, what they've done, who they talked to, procedures, policies, things like that. You know, good policy for salesmen is don't lie to the customer because it will come back and bite you. Next, and this is going to be an unusual one, and that's don't cross-train. I know, it's really strange. All the years I spent in the Marine Corps as a Marine Corps officer in the communications technology section of the Marine Corps, I always cross-trained as many people as I could. I would rotate people in and out. That's good for cybersecurity, by the way, rotate people in and out. But I would teach them. They had to learn VHF radio. They had to learn HF radio. They had to learn how to do field cabling, things like that. And I would switch it up, and I would switch it around so people would know. And that's great for the military, because you're in combat and one person gets killed, I'm sorry to say, or injured. then you need someone else to fill into that position. So everyone gets cross-trained. However, in business, it's expensive. And, I used to give out manuals here. I need you to get certified in, Cisco, CCNA. I need you to become a CCNA, and I'll give you a raise if you get a CCNA. You know what I found out when I kept on talking to people about that, and I kept on saying, look, you need to be certified, you need to be certified. What I figured out was I just annoyed them. Very few of them, maybe one or two, really took me up on my offer that I'd give you a raise if you get this particular certification or that particular certification. I even offered to buy the exam. So I was going to buy the self-study book. I could send them to school, and I would pay for the exam. Very few people took it. So my advice in the future, if I was going to start this all over again, is I hire what is needed. And that's it. Then I leave it up to the individual if they want to learn more. Also learned in doing that cross-training that I was helping competitors. I remember one time I sent a guy out to 2 weeks worth of training, technical training, paid him, paid for his housing, paid for his food, paid for his transportation. He came back with his certification on a Friday. He put it on my desk and he says, I need a raise. And I said, okay, let me recover the cost of sending you to training all these months or weeks. And it wasn't months, it was weeks. And he turned around and he goes, nope, I'm quitting. I got a job offer. It's going to pay me X amount of dollars more starting Monday. Thank you. That was a beautiful payback. So just remember that cross-training is great when you're in the military. And you kind of have to have people that know other people's jobs, kind of, but it's a waste of time. It really is. It's a waste of time, and it annoys employees. So another thing is, as I trusted, but I did not verify always. I learned that during those 30 years being in business. I'll give you a quick example. I had a salesman put out a proposal, and I decided I was going to check that proposal because that sounded like an interesting proposal. And so, we were business to business, so rarely worked in a person's home. That was not our area of expertise or focus. It was always, as a business, we are helping other businesses to grow. We're helping other businesses with their IT issues. So we were going to do cabling in this business. It was probably 50 or 60 locations in a building. And I took his proposal before he submitted it to the customer. And I looked at it, and I did the math on it. So I got the calculator out, did the math, and I looked at the parts. How many parts would we need? Remember, you got to have that knowledge if you're a business owner. And then I looked at how long it would take to install that system in those locations. And then I, would look at all the other stuff like warranty issues, things like that, all the stuff that salesmen know about, that I've trained them on, that I told them what to say and what to do and everything else. And only to come back to realize that he underbid it, that our cost was going to be about 10% higher than what the customer was going to pay. And when I called the salesman in, I confronted him with this. You didn't follow procedures, you didn't do your estimate right. And he kind of like, yeah, I know. And I said, well, you knew this and you're going to propose this to a customer? He goes, yes. Because I really need the commissions. I should have fired him on the spot for that. He was more concerned about his commissions than he was doing the job right and taking care of the company that pays him. So all I needed was a couple salesmen like that for a couple months, and I'm out of business, So trust, but verify. From there on out, we had a little form that had to be filled out on every single installation of IT systems. And it listed every cost in there. And guess what? That was filled out by the technology people, by the tech department, by the dispatcher. And he had to prove every single part that was in there. He had to prove the price, how long it took to put it in, and then I would meet that up with the proposal and see if we made any money. From there on out, that's what I did. So I learned you got to trust, but you got to verify. And last, it's kind of not last, but next to the last, because the last one you're going to like. Next to the last is something that I did that I decided I'll never do again, and that was pay advance. It's like a good employee, he's a decent employee, he came to me and he said, Jim, I'm really having a rough month and everything else. Now, I also knew that he had a champagne taste, but he had a beer pocketbook, if you've ever heard that phrase before. My mom used to say it all the time, that we as a family have a champagne taste, but we only have a beer pocketbook. But he would spend money left and right, maxed out all his credit cards, he told me, everything else. He just needed to get through the next month, wondering if he could get a pay advance. And he was on salary, so it was not hard to figure out what his pay was going to be. So I said, sure. He seemed like a hard worker. I mean, every day he was there and with a big venti from Starbucks. Even as a business owner, I'm not going to go every day to Starbucks. It's too expensive. I had free coffee in the office I offered everybody. And every afternoon he had his venti, a new venti coffee there. So he was always overspending his personal finances. Anyway, make a long story short, shows up the next day after I give him the pay advance, or a couple days later, a brand new Lexus, top of the line, beautiful car. It was great. I wouldn't have bought it, but he bought it. And then about a week later, I get a certified letter from his lawyer saying that they're filing bankruptcy and that the month of advance that I gave him was going to be part of the bankruptcy. So I called him in the office and I said, hey, what's up with this, man? Out of the goodness of my heart, I helped you out. And he goes, yeah, and you can hold me accountable to pay you back. Well, make a long story short, he didn't last very long after that. Now, the biggest mistake I've made in business, I actually made back in the 80s, one of my first businesses. I went into business with a friend. Man, he was a great friend. And something else, I could trust him. He was a trustworthy person, had integrity and everything else. And he and I started a business, and it grew, and it grew, and it was really well. I mean, I was busting gut 12 hours, 18 hours a day, doing everything I can to make this business successful, meeting customers, talking to them, things like that. And then I noticed that he was pocketing cash, because this was 50-50 when it came to cash or check. And the cash he was leaving in his pocket and not turning it in to the bank. And some other practices that he was doing, the harder I'd work, the less he'd work. He always had excuses not to be at work. But he was my partner and he was my friend. No more. I decided that I did not want to get in trouble with the IRS. So if the IRS is watching, this was back in the 80s, okay? And I walked away from the business. I didn't take a dime after the day I decided that partners don't work. And of course, I've seen that in real life also lately. 30 years being in business, my business, talking to other businesses. Some of them that were partners, most of them did not work out. They ended up in court or they ended up being dissolved. And some of them were quite large, 200 plus employees at a mortgage company that I knew. The mortgage company stopped paying us for work we were doing, and I went to see the guy, and the two partners were good guys. I really liked them, and they liked each other too. And I said, hey, how come you're not paying? But nicely I said that. I expected to get paid. And the guy, is holding his head and rubbing his face. He goes, I don't have any cash right now. I said, you don't have any cash? How's that? And he said, well, my partner took off. No one knows where he's at, but everyone surmises he's in South America, and he took all the cash with him. Now, eventually I got paid. He was a good guy. But as soon as he took care of all his obligations, he got out of that company, sold it, gave it to someone else or something. I don't remember. It was years ago. But the biggest mistake I ever made was partner. And the reason why was there were so many strings on it. Who's going to do what? Who's going to do this? Who's responsible here or there? Things like that. Plus, you get mad. You want to grow, and the other guy wants to stay put. You want to go into this field. He wants to go backwards, or vice versa. Things like that. So I'd never seen it really work out really well. Now, your experience might be different. So don't sit there and send me a bunch of emails telling me how wonderful it is. For a small business, it's not. If you and your friend are sitting there watching football, and then one of you look at the other and say, we need to sell hula hoops or something like that, and no, stay away from that. Just smile at your friend, because you want to keep that person as your friend. Now, if you still decide that you're going to go in business with a friend or relative, a stranger, whatever, as a partner, then this is how you do it, okay? And this is how I would do it, even though I'd never do a partnership, ever. This is how I would do it. And the way I would do it is I would write down all the responsibility that each person has, what has to be done, the direction of the company, the philosophy of the company, who's going to be your customer, who's going to be your suppliers, how you're going to make decisions, two of you. Maybe sometimes it's easier if you have three partners, I don't know. But to make a long story short, put it in writing, have it signed so everybody knows job descriptions, who has what responsibility and what jobs. That's how I would do it. And that's the worst decision I ever made, because I lost a lot of time with that company, building and helping and working on that partnership. And time is more important than money, and that's why I walked out the door and said, it's all yours. Have a nice life. Goodbye. And hopefully you put your time and effort into your business, and that it is very successful because of that. Again, this is Jim Gibson. Thank you for watching me. Please subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and then you have a good day.